So welcome everyone for our next session of Travel Diaries. In this session, Dr. Bhami Shenoy will be taking us on a trip to China and Uzbekistan. So Dr. Bhami V. Shenoy is Vasant Shenoy's uncle. So I will hand it over to Vasant Shenoy to give an introduction of him.
Okay, thank you, Kedar. So Bami Venkatam Shena is my uncle, as Kedar said. He was part of the second batch of IIT Madras. He came to US in 1965 to pursue his master's degree from, as he said, Illinois, IIT in Chicago. And after his master's, he went to work for an oil major called Conoco, starting at Ponca City in Oklahoma. That's in around 1966. And then he went to, with Conoco, he worked at Houston, London, Milan, Dublin, Ireland, and then back at Houston. And then he retired. He left Conoco in 1986, and in effect retired to go back to India, early 1980s or something like that. 1986, yeah. He that was, when he did, he was only 44 years old. So uh, I can't imagine myself doing that at that age. So once in Mysore, he started a consumer movement, something called as the Mysore Grahakar Parishad, and has been working with various educational and environmental groups. He's actively involved with all these groups, but he and my Pachi have been traveling all over the world. And today he's going to talk about his experience about China and Uzbekistan. And also towards the end, he'll talk about his experience of going back to India and starting these NGOs. Venkarabha. Venkarabha, unmute kari. You're muted. Okay.
Thank you for all those who have joined. I have been really looking forward to this for a number of reasons. One, this gave me a chance to study where I went. I thought that I knew most of these things, but as I was preparing the presentation, I realized how memory can play on you. So I think we will have the discussion towards the end with this muting and unmuting business. And so this will give you an idea of how we went through China. And we went with the Kesari Travels. Some of you might have heard of it. And we have had a lot of good luck with the Kesari, and we have gone with them to not only to China, but to Bali and Indonesia. To European trip we went, I saw your European trip. They did an excellent job of going through 6 places, Russia, Scandinavian countries. We really enjoyed it. Though I have gone on business to all these places, I was able to see more when I went with them than when I went on business. And another interesting place I went, and I didn't even know in India we have Switzerland, that is Leh Ladakh. I don't know how many of you have been lucky enough. Till I went to Leh Ladakh, I had no idea what was Leh Ladakh. And once I went there, I thought, why we people have not heard about it? And of course, now we know Leh Ladakh for a different reason, China attacking. So let me start. So we flew from Bangalore to Singapore, and there we met Vasant's dad and my other nephew. From there, we went to Beijing. And from Beijing, we flew to Xi'an, and Xi'an is the first capital of China. From there, we flew to Guilin, and from Guilin, we went to Shanghai. From Shanghai, we returned to Bangalore. So this is where we met my elder brother and my nephew in Singapore. Until we met them, we did not know, because we reached first and we had no idea how we are going to get connected. I was going all around Singapore airport. Finally, we were so happy when we met them. This is the airport in Beijing. As you can see, it looks very nice. One of the reasons I wanted to visit China is that I have worked in former Soviet Union countries for almost 10 years. There, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Azerbaijan. And I have seen firsthand what communism was, and also had a chance to know why communism failed. So I was wondering what will happen to China. But at the same time, unlike Russia, China's GDP was increasing, they were prospering, and they were becoming the manufacturing place for the whole world. But still, I wanted to find out if there was anything wrong with their communism for them to fail, and I wanted to really get a first-hand. I'm not sure from my trip I was able to get it, but I was really impressed the way that they have developed. And I'm sure that those of you who might not have gone to China will be really impressed the way their tall buildings are, or parks, or the beautiful museums, and the way they have taken care of cleanliness. That is the one. We were searching for garbage in China and we couldn't find it. And that is really amazing. And we were also looking for beggars, excepting in one place we did not see anybody. And that has really what has left deep impression on my mind. This is the hotel where we stayed in Beijing. So this is the Tiananmen Square, which we have all heard of. Another scene of Tiananmen Square. And you may recall, this became famous in 1989 when Communist Party gunned down some of their own protesters. And when we were there, to some extent, even we were afraid, because we were not sure whether we are followed by plainclothes person and what we should talk, whether we can criticize Chinese government or not. And that is really surprising. You don't feel that in many places, including Russia, where I have been. I was not afraid of. But for some reason or the other, when we were in Tiananmen Square, we were afraid of what we were speaking. And that is really surprising. And that may be because of what happened in 1989 there. And this is the famous iconic photo of Tiananmen Square that you might have seen often. And now we will enter the, no, we are still outside. Yeah, this is the Forbidden City. And this is where the Chinese emperor used to live. And it was called as Forbidden City because the ordinary people were not allowed to enter this place. And this is a huge area. I don't know what acres it is, but I would say easily more than 100 acres. And a lot of buildings, a lot of palaces, parks, and I won't be able to show all that, and nor did we take all those pictures, but few pictures of it. But you can get an idea of how crowded this place is. In fact, we could not really capture the real crowd. it is even more crowded than what you see over there. Okay, this is my elder brother with my sister-in-law. This looks like some kind of a shrine. Okay, you may be surprised why I have put this picture, and I did it intentionally. This is the toilet. And every place we went, again, excepting one or two places, maybe only one place, toilet is absolutely clean and you enjoy using toilet. And naturally you can see people from India, us, we think, why can't India do the same thing? And of course, we all the time talk about Singapore and say that we will recreate, or not recreate, we will create Singapore. Our politicians talk about it, but the moment they get down from the podium, they forget that they talk like that. But so this is the reason to talk about the toilets in China. I put the picture, but this is the case everywhere. And as you know that China is famous for rock garden, and to be expected, there this beautiful rock garden in the Forbidden City. Another picture in the Forbidden City. There are many, many such photogenic places in China, in this Forbidden City. You can see a tank over here with a beautiful building. Okay, so we are now finished our tour of Forbidden City, and luckily in China, just about every place there are good Indian restaurants. And that was one of the worries of a few of us, whether we will get Indian food or not. And excepting in Julin, we were able to get pretty tasty Indian food. This is the Temple of Heaven. We saw that in the afternoon. Another sign. And it is really interesting that under communism, as we all know, that they go out of their way to destroy religion. And when we talk about Uzbekistan, it will come up again. But surprisingly, China did not follow the path of Russia. Otherwise, if this was in Russia, I suspect we would not have seen this beautiful architecture. They would have converted into something else. But China seems to have maintained, or at least that's what the impression we got. Again, the same, it is in the Temple of Heaven, another scene of that photo. Okay, now this will give you idea of the tall buildings and unusual architecture of Beijing. When you go with the travel agency like Kesari, for that matter, I think any, almost every day we end up going to shopping centers. And to our surprise, many times, the fellow travelers, they seem to be enjoying going to shops than visiting places. They are happy when they go to these kind of shops, though many cannot afford to buy these things, but they still enjoy going to them. And sometimes it is really enjoyable. As you can see, beautiful jade piece here. And as you can see, this is another one. Another picture. Buddha's jade. Okay, we'll see again, this is the photo of a terracotta soldier. We will see more of it. Okay, now we'll come to the Great Wall of China, which is about 1 hour drive from Beijing. And this is a must-see site. This was built in, difficult to believe, 2nd century BC. And the final work was finished only 17th or 18th century. And surprising thing is that from 2nd century BC, how it has survived. And we were able to walk only very, very small portion of it. And this, here again, you can see the crowd. And so we are taken over there by ropeway. And this is the gate to the Great Wall. And when we come out of it, this is another beautiful building. There are so many of that one. We did not, we finally stopped taking photos of these. And this, you might have seen, those who are interested in sports, Olympic Stadium, they call this as a bird's nest. We did not go inside. There was not time. Another thing we were surprised to find is throughout the roads, we see these beautiful roses. I don't know how they are planting and how they are taking care of it, but we saw so many people working on the road all the time, cleaning it and taking care of these rose plants. Yeah, this is an interesting that they took. This is having tea over there is kind of a function. And we were taken to this tea restaurant where we were seated, and then they explained about the tea. And we will be surprised because we also grow tea like China. And but still it was instructive to learn about this tea serving in China. And this is not some park. This is by the side of road. We saw this one. How beautifully they are trying to maintain. Either our tour guide has taken to only certain places, or this is the way it is, but we saw similar things not only in Beijing, but in also other cities of China. Okay. Another restaurant in Beijing, Taj Pavilion. Okay, this is the usual thing the tourists go, and this is the terracotta soldiers. Yeah, this is the terracotta soldiers. And to us, it looks like a nice thing to see, but those who went through that, and this was again done 4th century BC, when the emperor died. Some 70,000 people worked in creating these tiny soldiers to bury that emperor. We may really wonder, how did they come up with that one? And this is the thing, not only in China, in Egypt, the pyramid again is the same concept of trying to bury the emperor to take care of him in his afterlife. And here the same thing, that they had all these soldiers to take care of the dead emperor wherever he goes. To us, it may not make any sense, but to them, it did. And today we are enjoying that as a tourist place. Look at this, such a gigantic place. And it is surprising that this was completely buried, and it was found only in around 1920, 1930. That really surprises. And when they dug this place, they were able to see all this. This terracotta museum, they call this as. And this is also another iconic soldier's photo. Of course, there are a lot of details. I'm not getting into that. This one looks like almost the Sri Krishna sitting in the chariot in Kurukshetra, but I don't think that is the case here, but that is what I was reminded of. And this is outside that. Okay, now we are in Zion, and this is a cave where we were really had an interesting time looking at all these stalagmites. Of course, this one, not only in China, but you can see in Vietnam, also in US. And if you go to China, how can you come without having massage? So our travel agency provided for the massage, and I think we had to pay for it extra. So yeah, I decided not to go through, but my wife was looking forward to, and here she is. This is another hotel in Guilin. And when we go by the bus, the Kesari bus, we always manage to sit in the back so that we had enough chairs. So in Guilin, we took a boat ride down the river, River Lee. That was a very interesting 3-hour boat ride. And that is the only time when we were not served Indian food. And though we were served vegetarian Chinese food, it wasn't like the Chinese vegetarian food we taste in the US. But we managed some or other, because when you are hungry, you eat it, but it was not one of those delicious things. So this is our fellow travelers. And we got down to see in that while taking the boat ride. As you can see, every time we get a chance, they will take us to shopping place. And I think that they know that their clients also would like to visit. So we spent almost like 1 hour. So you can imagine 3 hours of boat ride, 1 hour of shopping, whether you like it or not. That is one of the problems of going with the tour, but there are a lot of other advantages. Like we don't have to worry about when problems are there, which there are always. And the good travel agent always figures how to solve it. And they took us to a place where they make this fine silk. And they showed us how from beginning to the end, the manufacturing of silk cloth. So this is another part of that factory. Another scene. Okay, this is the statue of the famous Yuan Sheng, who came in around 630 to India and spent almost like 20 years in Nalanda University. And he is celebrated so much in this place in Zion that there is a special park. And it seems when he came back, there was a lot of festivities, because he came after spending so much time, and he brought thousands of books from India, and which is really surprising that we come to know more about India from his writings than about our own what is available. Or at least that is the impression I have as an engineering student. Maybe those who have studied Indian history, they might have. But we seem to be learning more about India from travelers who have come to India rather than from our own people, which is really surprising. And when we read history, like in case of Egypt, 3000, 4000 BC years, they have recorded history. And in our case, we are telling that Ramayana, Mahabharata was transmitted only through rote memory, that we did not have writing at that time. I really wonder whether our historians know it or we are given the wrong information. And imagine when he came at that time, that we are learning more about India from his writings. This is the pagoda in Guilin. Now we are in Shanghai. Shanghai is something unbelievable. In 25 years, they have totally converted Shanghai, and it looks more like Manhattan, but without the problems of Manhattan. It is, as we all know, that it was a British colony at one time, and not exactly colony, but there were Britishers and other foreigners were living. So it has that image of Western country. In terms of history, there is not that much, but in terms of modernity and in terms of what China has been able to achieve, that is a place to go. And so this, to give an idea of like how tall this building is, it is just like we people going to Empire State Building. And I think that this was taller than Empire State Building. It's another picture of Shanghai. So there is our Starbucks. And to be expected, wherever we saw Starbucks or those places, we were happy. In fact, we were taken to one of those places. Yeah. So you can see the architecture of China over there. This is what we see every place we go. Okay, this is, we were entering now Jade Buddha temple. And so this is the reclining Buddha. We were told that this came from India. And it is possible it might have come from India, but when I read about it, they were telling that the Chinese monk who went to Singapore, he got it from Singapore. More than likely, in case of Singapore, I don't think that they can create this one. They might have got it from India, and it may really be a gift from India. And this is a very recent thing, 1965 or 70. A very nice Buddhist temple. So another picture over there in Shanghai. Okay, now we switch over to Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, it is just 2.5 hours from New Delhi, and it costs $300 or $400. I'm trying to give an idea because it is very inexpensive to fly into Uzbekistan, visit Uzbekistan. The total cost is per person around $2,000, and we stayed in reasonably 4-star, and many places, even if you want to, 5-star may not be available, excepting in Tashkent, the capital. And till recently, or at least when I was growing up in India and when I was living also, I had no idea of all these stans. I had never heard of what is this Uzbekistan. The only time we heard about Uzbekistan was when we came to know about the death of Shastri in Tashkent. That's the only time we learned about that. And we were never taught that Russia was a colonizer like Britain or Belgium or France. But after going over there, I came to know that Russia is as worse a colonizer as any other colonizer. They imposed their Russian language, they imposed their philosophy, and in many respects, they were even worse. But surprisingly, our history books did not reflect, or at least the history books I came across did not. Maybe I got lousy education there. So I got a chance to go and work in these towns in 1991. And the first place I went was Georgia, then Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. So I had been to Tashkent. So when my friend asked, would you like to join him in Uzbekistan? I said, oh yes, love to. When I used to go there, I never had a chance to visit. And so I said, oh, I know quite a bit about Uzbekistan since I've traveled. But once we started to tour around, I came to know that I knew so little about it. So we flew in the night to Uzbekistan. Tashkent reached around 2 or 3 o'clock. There was a guide to receive us, and he took us to a hotel. And after spending 2 days in Tashkent, we flew to Urgench. Pretty good, nice airport, uncrowded. From there, we drove to Khiva, one of the cities on the Silk Road. We will talk more about it. And from Khiva to Bukhara, we traveled by road. We had a very good SUV. From Bukhara, we went to Samarkand again by car. But if you are planning, you don't have to go by car. But we thought that by going by road, we get a flavor of the country. And we realized as we were going, it was a not so enjoyable ride. We didn't see much. And it was practically desert throughout. Then we realized, oh, we made a mistake. We should have flown from Urgench to Bukhara and also from Bukhara to Samarkand. But from Samarkand, we took a fast train. It was about a 2-hour fast train to reach Tashkent. So that is how we saw the most of the important places in Uzbekistan. This is the airport. As you can see, not that crowded, and a brand new airport. So this is the first working madrasa we saw. Under communism, till 1991, from 18th century and 19th century and 20th century, when Russians took over Uzbekistan, they closed down or destroyed almost 20,000 mosques. 20,000 mosques. Imagine that. And also closed down madrasas. After 91, and I will show you the picture of how these mosques were looking at during the communism time, what they have done. And they did the same thing, not just to the Islamic heritage, even to their own Christian heritage in Moscow. Many of them, they completely destroyed it, and many of them, they allowed it to deteriorate. Some of the churches inside the Kremlin itself, it was like that. And we visited this, which was very close to our hotel, and we walked over there. So this is the first working madrasa we saw where students were studying. And Uzbekistan is also one of the places from where the jihadi elements were sent to different parts of the world to start the terrorism. And even in Uzbekistan also, they were there in a place called Andijan. But the dictator of this place, Karimov, he took very strict action against them, and either he murdered them or he threatened them that, okay, I will give you money, you get lost. And that is how we got peace. And people seem to be quite happy when we were talking with them. Whether real or not, that is what they were telling us. So this is, and you will see lots of this kind of pictures, and this will remind us of our own structure in India. And there is a lot of interaction. There was a lot of interaction between Uzbekistan and India. And Babur came from Uzbekistan here, and we will visit the place where he was born. This is the Chorsu Bazaar in Tashkent. These bazaars are almost like our type of marketplace anywhere you see in Bangalore or Mysore. And so to get a flavor, this was the first thing that we saw day after we landed in Tashkent. This is our guide. You can see the different flowers. And so different kind of dresses, and so they will let us wear it and buy. One of our fellow travelers, he almost came to buy one of these. So since Shastri died over there, they have named the street Shastri Road, and they have also installed the Shastri bust over there. And I don't know whether you have seen the movie Tashkent File. Those who are interested in history, they may like to see it. It is really revealing. Many of you may remember that there are really doubts about how Shastri died. And this movie brings out that and tries to show fingers at the politicians who might have killed Shastri. Hard to believe it, but it is really a very interesting documentary. And it came only about 3 or 4 years back. A must see for those who want to know more about India. This is a museum in Tashkent. And as you can see outside, how beautifully they have maintained it. And Uzbekistan is a small country with about 35 million population. And it was in pretty bad shape, and it got independence from Russia in 1991. When I went over there in 96, 98, 99, it was a very, very bad shape. And when I went in 2018, it was a totally different place. Wedding. Okay, this is the museum outside. This is a relatively new mosque which has been built for hosting almost like 4,000 or 5,000. It's called as White Mosque, slightly outside Tashkent. You never get tired of taking pictures. It is so beautiful. Yeah, this okay, this is an interesting one you see in Astans. This is yurt. Difficult to imagine that this is how people used to live earlier, that is before all these buildings came about, and how they maintained warmth inside. This is called as yurt. I have seen this also in Kazakhstan and not so in Turkmenistan, but in the colder places. And this, they have just put it in some place just to show how people lived in this yurt. And this is the statue of Amir Temur or Tamerlane. And it is really Tamerlane who was born in Samarkand, and who was the founder of Uzbekistan, or that place, because Uzbekistan was really a creation of Russia in 1934. And otherwise, it was just different Kanates, like Khiva Khanate or Bukhara, Buruka, like that. Bukhara, Samarkand, like that one, Kokand. So they brought it together. And it seems that Temur was such a brutal person. He has killed, I think, millions. And he created an empire, which is the third largest after Alexander the Great and another person, I forget his name, maybe Kublai Khan. So this is the third person who has created the largest empire. And so we see his statues here in Tashkent, that we will see when we go to Samarkand again. Another beautiful dresses. And Uzbekistan is very famous for this kind of dresses, and we see many places. Thousands of people are employed in this. And what has happened is this: all these beautiful madrasas and mosques today are not the working mosques. They have all been converted into shops. That is really a pity. And many shops, they do this handicraft work. By the time I finish this one, you will get a pretty good idea of it. This is in that museum. Our guide, she took a lot of time in trying to explain all about Uzbekistan. We learned quite a bit about the history of Uzbekistan. So this is another place where we have mosque and madrasa. As you can see over here, this is the shop inside this madrasa. And yeah, and all around we see these kind of shops. And this is the drawing that we see thousands and thousands, and we feel like buying them, and we ended up buying a couple of them also. So this is built in 16th century. Lots of minarets, you will see like this. This is Uzbekistan, and only the Russian communists can build these kind of gigantic building. This was built during the Russian time, and it gives the impression that this must be a pretty nice hotel. And we came to know that if you rate this one, it may be less than 2-star. And people don't like to stay in that place. So this is a monument to the failure of communism. But from outside, it gives the appearance of a great hotel. And this is located in this Temur Square, where we spent a lot of time going around because it is in the central part of Tashkent. And this is a typical this Tashkent restaurant. We had food, we had lunch. As you can see again, this is all these stands are famous for carpets, and the most famous carpets are made in Turkmenistan. This is when we visited one of the museums. there we got these paintings. Yeah, this is an interesting one. He has created this Omar Khayyam's pictorial book, all in leather. And it seemed that it took almost like a year for him to complete it. And so out of curiosity, we asked how much is he willing to sell. Of course, his idea is to sell it. His quotation was $10,000. I was really interested to buy it, and I reduced it to $5,000. I did not have more than $300, but my fellow traveler said, okay, they will give money. And but he was not willing to reduce it to 5,000. Maybe that if he had increased, now I feel that I should have bought it. And it was really nice. My camera is not able to capture the beauty of that book. It was beautiful. Maybe next time when I go, he may still be there and may be able to buy it. This is the hotel where we stayed. As you can see, it was Radisson, very nice hotel. And just opposite to that is, this is the hotel, sorry. The other one is the library. And that library is absolutely great. That it was a national lab, and they have different sections for different grades. And also over there, what they have done is that they have created centers donated by Korea, by Russia, by China, and they have got those centers where they teach Chinese or Korean or English. Despite we having such excellent relations with Uzbekistan, I don't know why we are not created Indian center. And there is a room over there, there are antique books, and 60% of the books are about India and about Indian history. Babarnama and those kind of books are over there. It was really fascinating to see so many books about India being stored there, which are written in English, German, French, and the Russian language. So many of them. But unfortunately, our consulates or embassy has not advised, or our politicians have not thought fit. So this is another picture of this Amir Temur, 1336 to 1405. And as I said, that we flew from Tashkent to Urganj, and there we were staying in a hotel, and our lunch was not ready. And when we were waiting for that one, we found a marriage ceremony was going on. And so these were the dancers of that marriage ceremony. They were getting ready there. So they said, can we take pictures? And they were very happy. This is the Silk Road in Khiva. When we enter that place, they have exhibited outside, which is not very clear over here. And this is the Silk Road project of the olden days. But now the China has taken it up, the new Silk Road project. Ichankala, this is absolutely stunning place, which was built in 9th century. And to see that it is still in the similar kind of situation in 21st century is unbelievable. But unfortunately, despite being UNESCO heritage, you will see inside, shops and others have really marred the beauty of this beautiful building. This is also another place you never get tired of taking pictures from different angles. So this is the entrance. So this is the entrance to that place. And you will see that minaret over there. There is a story to that minaret. So this is that Kalta Minor Khiva. And it was started by Army General, but it was never finished. And you can see how beautiful it looks. So this is the building over there. There are so many madrasas and mosques inside, but very few are working mosques today. It's the replica of prison in the Khiva. Again, this is a replica to take pictures. And these wooden pillars, it seems that they were imported from India. And this is the palace. And this is from the top of the roof that I was taking picture of Khiva inside. And it is completely surrounded inside a fort. And Khiva is one of the important cities on the Silk Road. So this is another picture. You get an idea of, there are 3 or 4 minarets like this. This is inside mausoleum. It's another outside in the night of Khiva. And we had pizza in that place inside the Khiva before going to the hotel. This is a very old mosque which is not used. Inside the mosque itself, they had a well, and you can see all this wooden structure. And I have not been able to really get the beauty of it. About 2 months back, there was a beautiful article written about Uzbekistan by one Ashish, somebody from New York. And they had a picture of it. It was looking really stunningly beautiful, far better than the picture that I'm showing over here. And it was very interesting to see this old mosque. And many people don't even see, because from outside, it doesn't give the impression of a beautiful mosque. And this is all in Khiva, musicians. You can see this is the carpet from Turkmenistan. Okay, then from Khiva, as I told you beginning, that we took the road to go to Bukhara. And this is the Amu Darya River, a very famous river. There are 2 famous rivers in Uzbekistan, Amu Darya and Sur Darya. And these are the rivers which go into the Aral Lake, the famous Aral Lake, which is now today only 10% of what it was. And this is because of the failed agricultural policy of Russia. And it is really a pity, and it is such an environmental disaster. And there is nothing that they can do about it. And it is really a tragedy to the country. We will talk about it. This is in Samarkand, this minaret. And this is the one that you saw the picture which came along announcing this travel log today. This is another picture of Amir Temur. Now we are in Samarkand. This is one of the mausoleums of their saints. A mosque, and this is a working mosque, but we can go inside. Another scene of that mosque. This is Registan in Bukhara. Registan means in Persian sand palace. And since Uzbekistan was under Persian influence in the first 7th centuries before Muslims came and took over. It is its culture and its architecture and its food are influenced quite a lot by Persia, just like we in India are also influenced. This is another photo. This is the place where emperor used to receive people inside this Registan outside. Something about madrasa. This is an interesting story that is really surprising. This is going back to almost the 6th or 7th century, how it is still maintained. And when I heard the story of it, that the Buddhists used for worshipping in the morning, and the Jewish used to, synagogue in the morning and Buddhist in the afternoon. And now it has become a carpet shop. But what is important is so much of tolerance was there, and the fact that it continued to stay even under Muslim rule and even under communism. But if they had the imagination, they could now convert back into a religious place. It would have been nice, but chances are not very bright. So this is almost like underground. And this is Char Minar, that is our Char Minar of Hyderabad. We were told that Char Minar of Hyderabad influenced this one. I do not know how true it is, because some of these are not verifiable facts. But what is important about this building is that the 4 minarets represent 4 important religions. That is 3 Abrahamic religion and 1 is Buddhism. And they used to have the madrasa in this of all these 4 religions. That is absolutely fascinating, that how we could have that kind of religious tolerance. And this is inside one madrasa. Again, you can see these are all converted into shops. And here that they had Jewish synagogue in Bukhara, and it is still there, and they still have some kind of worship. There are very few are there. A typical street in that Bukhara. So they are having lunch there. And inside the shop where they sell different kinds of carpets, mosque. This is the hotel we stayed. Yeah, this is the minaret that you saw again, as I told you. Never get tired of taking pictures. And this was taken with an ordinary camera. And now we are in Samarkand. And in Samarkand, that is where Timur was born, and he came to rule it. And his son, not his son, Babur was also born there, and who came to rule India. And this Ulugh Beg is an astronomer. Just imagine in 14th century, that we'll see is conservative, that besides being a ruler, how he found time to be astronomer and mathematician, and he knew 5 or 6 languages. And same time, there were other famous, Al-Biruni, philosopher was there, and so many other authors were also there. So Uzbekistan has given so much during that time But what happened later on, that is really surprising. This is the Madrasa of Ulugh Beg. And this is a conservatory. Picture. And this is Shahi Zinda. And this is where a lot of tombs of famous people are there, about 14 or 15. Some very stunning, beautiful buildings are here in so much. This is a photographer's delight. This is just one such building in that one. The hotel we stayed. And this is the Rajasthan in Samarkand. And there are 3 mosques over here and madrasas. The Amir Temur's mausoleum over here. And this is something now we will see how beautiful it is inside. Now, this is the way it was during communist time. And what you saw now is all restored after the communism ended in Uzbekistan. This is how they allowed. You can see the shops in front of that. And so how only the people, the leader who came after the communism, he was also a dictator and he was able to do just about anything he liked. And he was able to restore it. And in terms of destroying all the shops and others he could do, but how he found money to do that one, that is surprising because Uzbekistan is not a rich place. See, this is another statue of Amir Temur in Samarkand. Another place. So we went to a dance, and after the dance performance that we got the picture taken with the dancers. Now we are back in Tashkent. This is a modern mosque in Tashkent. And this is one of the Qurans. And this is the smallest Quran over there. And Amir Temur, when he went to take over Iraq from caliphs over there, he brought the original Quran of that time. New mosque. See, this is the Uzbekistan's. When we were waiting over there at the airport, getting ready to leave for India. So with this, I will finish. Oh yeah, this is the Silk Road. It starts Zion over here in China, all the way to Italy, and part of it also comes to India. This is the famous Silk Road. Now China is trying to rebuild. Now let me quickly so in 10 minutes, I will finish. As Vasant told that I returned to India in 1987 and started the Mysore Grahakara Parishad. So this is when we inaugurated it, CFTRI building. And the person you see over there, he retired, Chiranjeevi Singh, famous IAS officer. This is me. And so besides that one, I am also a member of the governing council, member of Consumer Voice. And I'm involved with running Pratham Mysore in Pratham. So we had invited Pratham's ambassador, Wahida Rahman, a few years back, thinking that if she comes, the rich people of Mysore will attend the function and give money. Instead, all that we were able to do was give them almost a free lunch. We did not raise even 1 rupee from all of inviting her. And I'm a trustee of Sehgal Foundation in near Gurgaon. They are working in the most backward districts of India called Nuh, which is located in Haryana. One of the major projects I started soon after going to India was to improve the public distribution of kerosene. Those of you who have come from India and have come from rural place, you know how important kerosene was and still to some extent when you are growing up. Only since 4 or 5 years back now, thanks to Modi's policy of 100% electrification of India, kerosene consumption has fallen down considerably. Otherwise, people have to wait for hours and sometimes days. And this was taken 1990 or so. And even as late as 2005, we had this kind of line. And I tried to work on that and try to suggest ways of improving it. In the process, what I suggested was implemented, the diversion was completely stopped and the dealers were so angry, they garawed me and they stoned my house. And Vasant was living, I think at that time, I don't know whether he remembers that or not, that such incident. See, this is the recent one, as you can see, because earlier there was no color photo. Now it is color photo, and this is what people are waiting. This is as late as 2011 or 2012. And this is the typical cart. It takes kerosene from house to house. And this is one of the most famous parks of Mysore, where they wanted to build a house for the film actors of the commissioner because he was an actor. And we filed a case that inside a park you cannot build anything, and we were protesting. And we filed a case, finally we won and we stopped the construction. And in order to fight the corruption, we started this is in 1991-92, during Dasara time, the Kawa over there, that is the art school, they constructed these 3 statues of bureaucrat, politician and businessmen, how they are corrupting the society, and we took them through the city. This gives you an idea of our school system over here. And this is a school next to the corporation building. And this is where the poor people go. And you can see in this class, maybe 4 or 5 standards are represented. Okay. And then you have this is in North India, and they are taught maths. Can you imagine learning anything at all in this crowded room? And over there were 7 or 8. This is the government school again. And this is another one in Mysore. And this is not old, this is reasonably new. And this is what is happening. This is a village in Nuh, about 70 miles from shining Gurgaon, where we had gone over there to discuss their problems. And Sehgal Foundation is involved in 3 things. One is improving water security, another is food security, and third is good governance, that is indirectly trying to help reduce corruption and get poor people getting all the different assistance programs that government gives with less bureaucracy, or at least even getting it, even with bureaucracy, it is so difficult. Like the old age pension, or trying to get the midday meals, or improving the school system, those kind of things we are helping them. Pratham got this Balavadis. We have all gone to proper preschool, those who have gone. I mean, in Bankwal, when we were growing up, we didn't even have an idea of what is a preschool. But now, almost all towns and big cities, middle class and the rich are able to send to good preschools, but in the poor, there is no concept of it. The new education policy is getting ready to introduce preschool from age 3. But till that time, I was doing this for last 20 years. So this is one of these Balavadi in Mysore. You can see that Balavadi, if it is not inside, it is outside. This is a tea cattle refinery in Georgia. I wanted to show this one to you, that Georgia is a country of 5 million, just like Uzbekistan is 34, and this is also under communist country. I used to work there fighting corruption, and I was told that there are 35 tea cattle refineries in a country of 5 million. I said, I can't believe it. He said, okay, we'll go. And we went around that one. In a couple of places, they came after us. These are all illegal buildings, and they get illegal crude, converting into petrol, gasoline. And so I was involved in exposing this one. And a Georgian friend of mine, he was even almost gunned down in the process. And he later became the chairman of the National Oil Company, and I served with him on the board of National Oil Company. So look at this. This is another tea cattle refinery. This is the famous Devraj market of Mysore. And you will see different pictures of it. The politicians would like to remove this one, demolish it completely, and build a new one. The heritage people say that there is no need to build it, that it is strong enough, you can work on that one and restore it. So we are involved in trying to make sure that it doesn't get demolished. But as of now, the fight is going on. The Prince of Mysore is also involved, that we are working with him also in this, because since it has come from his ancestors' era, he is interested to maintain it. So this is one of the major projects we are involved with. And as you can imagine, politicians are all up in arms. And so they call Mysore Grahakara Parishad as Mysore Grachara Parishad. And this is an idea to give that we are involved in trying to keep city clean. This is the way the garbage was being handled. And this garbage handling center was beautiful, working with the Indian technology of converting this into manure. But unfortunately, because of corruption and the way it was handled, it was not working properly. So we had gone there to see what can be done. So this is the plastic waste, which was segregated after the garbage was brought. So Mysore University. And with this one also, I was involved whenever out of turn professorship are given, fought against it, tried to expose by telling that there is corruption involved. So you can see it doesn't make you very popular when you try to get involved. And this is the building I showed you earlier, which was being built, and finally it is now converted into a toilet. Half of the building was removed. And this was after 10 years of court file. And finally it was able to do, because we came to know the IAS officer, and he was upright, and he helped us to do this one, and not the judicial system. When we won the case, the Mysore City Corporation went to the High Court. And there we would have fought for another 10 years, maybe to Supreme Court. So the judicial system does work that well in India. I wanted to show this one to show this is the shining India. We have this kind of situation, and we try to convey that we have to handle the garbage better and also poor people. This is a very good hospital, but it was violating the laws. Without getting all the permits, they started to work. And we filed a case against it. And this is just 2 minutes from my house. And as you can imagine, that in the process of filing a case against it, we ended up making enemies of so many people. One of the supporters, he used to give free newspaper to us to bring paper for Mysore Grahakara Parishad. When he came to know that we have filed a case against Vikram Hospital, he said, "You have gone against my friend, so I'm going to stop helping you." I said, "Fine, that's all right." So, and we have brought many mayors to show this is violating the law. In the basement, they are supposed to give parking, but they have converted that into a hotel. And this is what happens. So we finally said, okay, Save Mysore campaign we started. Save Mysore, that we, all these prominent people, these are professors and others who participated in that campaign. This KR, this Krishnaraj Sagar. I showed this one to show that this also we were involved in terms of trying to improve the water supply. And that was a big project that we were involved with. And we wanted to get rid of pig. There was a big pig menace. Pigs were all over. So we fought against and put the pressure upon the city that they should not allow it. And again, it is a big business. We were partly successful. And this is how water is coming to all this plastic and others, and people go and dump every kind of thing. And sometimes the same water comes to Mysore without any clearing. Only sometimes it does. And when it doesn't, I will show you what happened. This is what happened. The people on the way, they were taking water from unfiltered and unclean water, and they died. It became a big thing. And in order to improve the education system, I started what I call as True Education in this college, which I was able to help when I was working in the US. Company supported matching my donation. So I went over there to say that what is actually true education, that how children should ask questions. So it was quite success. Many of these people, they wanted to drop out because they were never accustomed to ask questions or participate. But after 20 sessions, some of them, when they were giving talks, like I will show you, that we had the final celebration, and the students were telling the teachers that, "Sir, in the future, when you come to teach us, allow us to ask you a question and don't spend all the time giving us notes or talking." So they were bold enough to talk like that, but I don't know how long it continued. I believe that we, the professionals, should enter politics. So I contested the election twice. And I think during one of the elections, Vasant was there, and he, along with his friends, campaigned for me. Help me? Okay, let me. So this is the check dams built by Sehgal Foundation near Noon. They have built such 100 check dams. This is the park where they wanted to build a library, and we have been fighting, and we exposed corruption in that park, how the contract was given, and that contract was finally removed, but the city itself decided to build all the same. One more protest in Park. This person was the former director of CFTRI, and till 92, till he died, he was quite active and working closely with Mysuru Grahakara Parishad. And the lady beside her, she is running very good school in Mysore. This is a protest by artists in that park. Look at this one. This is the way people in rural areas try to get the firewood. This is the building of Saigal Foundation in Gurgaon. This is the place where in my house, every month, Mysuru Grahakara Parishad meets and have discussion. Okay, we can now open up for discussion, Vasant and Kadam. Yeah. Do you recognize this person? This is Bhairappa. He was participating with us in fighting to save the Chamundi Hills. Here I was talking with the Minister Ramanath Rai that he was a forest minister. He should do something to save Chamundi Hills, but he said he doesn't know anything about it. Okay.
So very nice presentation, Bhami ma'am, of China, Uzbekistan, and also all the projects you're working on. So anyone has any questions to ask?
Hey Kedar, Milind here.
Hey, Milind.
Yeah. My question to Bhami ma'am is, how can is the next generation of Indians, the youth, getting involved in some of these movements to prevent the takeover of public land and all this corruption movement to help to ensure that the consumer movement continues in a big way in India?
I think you have asked an excellent question. In fact, I was hoping that you will ask that question because that is the most, I would say, disappointing. Like after 30 years being active in Mysore, we have not been very successful in attracting youngsters. I think in your group, you have Vasant. You can ask Vasant in terms of when he was a student over there, and over here how much student took interest. But to his credit, I should say that when we were having election, he was able to bring 4 or 5 people. But I would have expected more classmates of his to come, whether they know me or not. But the social responsibility, Milind, is just not there. And in fact, when we were going to school also, our teacher never told us that we are responsible. And when I introduced that True Education, that was one of the things we were doing. We were project of, we are socially responsible. And if those of you who are interested, and if they can do something about it, I can send you, they have prepared a video of True Education by IIT Madras. You will get an idea. We are all taught just to get high marks. That is it. And the same thing is happening today. And I go to schools and colleges and beg them to become members. Out of 10,000, maybe 2 or 3 people may come to do internship, but when they do the internship, they leave it. And it is really a tragedy, and this is really a big problem, and we have to work on that. The new education policy has some element of it, but I'm glad, Milind, that you asked the question. I cannot give a satisfactory answer. In fact, it is very, very disappointing. And it is not just a question of my NGO. I know with the other NGOs also, youngsters are not coming forward for whatever reason. And that is what really impresses me the most here in the US, is that it is the youngsters who are coming forward. Imagine over here during the presidential election also, who supported the presidential candidate? The youngsters who came forward.
Yes.
And that was one of the reasons when I went back to India. I was influenced very much by what happened during Vietnam War. It was the youngsters who brought down that. And I thought, okay, I will go to Mysore, and there is Mysore University. At that time, there was no Mangalore University to speak of. So I thought that I will be very close to these youngsters and I will be able to get them. My goodness, the students over there, they were not interested in any of this. They were more interested in fighting caste politics and hitting the professor because he belongs to this caste or that caste. I could not believe it. It was shocking.
Okay. Yeah.
No words for that, no, Milind.
Yeah. A little silent on that. But on the other hand, we do see some kids aspiring for IAS and other UPSC kind of commission, many of them trying to be IPS officers. There is a small percentage that is trying that out.
But it's still too far away and not like.
Is there a way to bring them in the fold?
Oh, you're talking about IAS officers?
Yes.
You know, just about every IAS officer who comes to Mysore, I am now familiar with. Yes, there are few, but there are very, very few. But most of them are not idealistic as you think it is, okay? Out of maybe 20 that I have come across, 1 or 2 maybe, the one that I talked about, Chiranjeevi Singh kind. They are very few. Most of them are just bureaucrats, typical bureaucrats.
Got it.
We have to really work upon that.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead. Now go.
Okay.
Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, so what will happen to the future of this organization you started then?
Well, it will continue, hopefully.
First you learn.
That it is still working. I'm not there, and it is still doing some work. But unless they are successful in bringing youngsters really with dynamism and idealism, it will become just like any other organization.
Are they scared of retaliation? Is that what the problem is with youngsters?
No.
They just need to make a living?
Retaliation problem is there a little bit, but you know, the retaliation really comes when you become really strong. But we are not anywhere close to that. Get that situation.
Okay. Very interesting slides. I just wanted to make a comment about that, and it's very difficult for me. I have done Italy and UK and all that last year. Boy, the work you have put in is tremendous work. So to describe the way you have described it is going to be tough on my part. So that's very impressive. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. You have been a part of it. Yeah, Preeti?
Yeah, Bhami Ma'am, do you have any suggestions for people in the US? And is there any way, people here can contribute in any way?
You can contribute immensely, and not only you can, but you must. Because we owe to the country, we got so much. And, we talk about India, but we are the people who got so much benefit. And you will be surprised. We don't have that feeling. I am very frank about it because I have tried to contact many of my IIT friends. And one of them, he was not my friend, he happens to be one IIT alumnus. When I said, you need to give some fund, he said, oh, I don't owe anything to IIT. It is because he was one of those NRIs and his father gave full money. I said, are you joking? What you paid for IIT is just chicken feed and what you would have paid over here. And that is how he was telling. And not only he, but many people we come over here, we don't even feel that we owe back to our country or to the institution where we graduated from. It is very unfair. And this is, I don't blame the people over here. It is because our education system has not instilled in us that we owe something back to the institution which has given us so much. So how you can, it is left to you, but definitely in any number of ways, not only we can help, we should help. There are any number of ways. I mean, if you are interested, we can talk outside. I don't like to take that time, but believe me, that is what I have been trying to do is that we should, when I look back, I have written a number of articles about it. Jewish people feel that they have nothing to do, but they feel that they have to help Israel. Armenians, some of them don't even know where Armenia is, but they feel that they need, the Armenia today exists only because of the help Armenians sent over there. Otherwise, Armenia would have disappeared. But we don't feel like that at all. I do not understand why. But of course, if something happens or somebody, some film actors does something or somebody does something to our Hindu gods and goddesses, we get all upset. But we don't get upset of the fact that we ourselves don't do anything to help India. And that was the reason I showed you the picture of that person sitting and eating from the dumpster. Even if you forget everything that I've talked about, at least remember of that guy. He is there because we owe something to that, okay? And that is what Vivekananda said. I consider every one of you a traitor who, having benefited from the education you don't give back to the country or to the society. I'm glad, Preeti, you asked that question. And I know some of our friends may get upset with me, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, that was a very impactful picture, actually. And we tend to get so comfortable in the life here, we sometimes forget to, give back or give back often enough.
Yeah, I am proud of the fact that I have got 2 Porsche cars, but giving some $10, I don't consider that as a big thing.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mama. It was a wonderful explanation of everything, history, the beauty of the cities that you visited. We are very happy to hear from you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else has any other questions or comments? If not, then, I thank Bhami Ma'am for everything, for the presentation as well as the projects that he's doing. And next week, we will be having Sapan and Devika Shenoy, who will be presenting on the cuisines of around the world. That will be at the same time, 2 p.m. on Sunday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you very much.